Thank you to the GRLI for hosting. Welcome everybody to today's courageous conversation on the topic of decolonisation. This is part of a series of conversations held by the GRLI where we try to dive into some of the more controversial and certainly the more significant issues that are facing the world at the moment. And we picked the topic of decolonisation because it's something very important to both Lana and I. And we're so pleased that it's generated a lot of interest even before the conversation. But thank you all for coming. Just to kick off, before I hand over to Lana, I just wanted to say a few words about decolonisation. Because I think we can see this as a kind of as an academic or a theoretical issue, something that is coming up in educational institutions, in our places of learning and thinking. But I just wanted to take a moment to ground us in the fact that actually we're talking about lives, we're talking about people's lives historically, and the way that the global system has evolved to marginalize or oppress some peoples and enrich other peoples. And so there's a sense in which, as well as being something that we want to explore intellectually, it's also something that has emotional content. And just to reflect that, I wanted to read a poem, which is actually a poem that Lana wrote. And it came across my Facebook because we're friends on Facebook, and it had a real impact on me. So I wanted to share it as our way of grounding ourselves in the topic. So it goes like this. As we were civilized, we lost our natural souls, our rootedness to the land. Forcibly shaped by the dominion of our colonizers, we broke the natural code of honoring the wild. We tamed ourselves to fit in, to become more palatable, to be relatable, internally oppressing our lost indigenous souls. Driven away, domesticated, threatened, we see our wild selves and we close our eyes. Yet the pull is there to reclaim ourselves, to reconnect to the land, the spaces where we were displaced. The civilized self no longer leading back to the wildness, back to the magnificent relationship with the holiness of life. So thank you for those words, Lana. And with that, I'll pass over to you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing my words. Like what Chris already mentioned, this topic around decolonization is something that feels relevant, not just for ourselves, but also for our time. And in the invitation, you've probably noticed the questions that we are holding around if education is to have a meaningful impact in the rapidly changing world that we have right now, what needs to change? And how do we embrace new and diverse worldviews? And how do we shift the paradigms to embrace the future? So many questions that are lingering. And of course, again, the question is, what is within our capacity and within our responsibility as leaders and as organizations? And this is why this conversation right now that we will be having around what is it around decolonization or bust within the business schools specifically. And we have 3 conversation starters that we've highly picked for today's conversation. So we have Aina Lira, and she is from Brazil. We have Anders, of course, we know Anders, who will also be sharing his experiences around being part of the business schools. And we also have Manish. And where is Manish Jain, who is based in India, and he will be sharing what they're also doing and the the shifts that they have been making. So I would leave the three conversation starters to lead the conversation with an introduction of themselves, to share who they are, and looking back in their career, why is decolonizing the business school relevant for us right now? Hi, Anders and Manish. Thank you for joining us. And who would like to start off the conversation with regards to who are you and why is decolonizing the business school relevant for us right now?
We can use the same democratic way we started before, like people, scissors, rocks, or I can start. I'm Hayana. You can call me Hi. It's just Hi in English. And the R in Portuguese sounds like H. There are three things you need to know about me. I value freedom, connection, and joy. These are my key values as a person. I'm a Brazilian Black cis woman, so coming from a very poor family background, and everything I do and I speak is transpassed by these characteristics. And of course, being Brazilian, living in Brazil, I speak Brazilian English. So if you notice something that you don't understand or if not clarify myself, please let me know and I try to explain it a little bit better. And the third thing is I'm moved by a question. How can I live the world better than I found? And this guide my decisions around what I'm doing for work, what I do for a volunteer, and offer volunteering offers to the world, but also shopping, traveling, so on. I hold a PhD in ecology, and I've been scientist for a while. But in the recent years, I've been working specifically in change-making field, preparing change makers to make change. I'm an educator by vocation, I'd say, and I'm program managing consultant, business consultant for care and more human and nature-centered relations, but also I'm a career development mentor and experience designing. So basically that's it. And I can go on why decolonization is important for me, relevant, after my colleagues introduce themselves too.
Manish, you, me. Salam namaste, everyone. My name is Manish Jain. I'm based in Udaipur, India, in Rajasthan, this magical land of Rajasthan. And I think I spent the first 25 years of my life colonizing myself and trying to fit in and, would I say, beat the white man at his own game. And I spent the last 25 years, I would say, under the tutelage of my illiterate village grandmother's university to decolonize myself under the guidance of indigenous elders and of the land and more than human beings of Rajasthan to help me in that journey. Very interesting. I am from one of the most famous and I would say vicious lineages of business families, business community in the world, probably the Marwadi community, which was all over the world, had played a very big role from the Indian side of colonizing, and so that's where my roots. It was very shameful for me for many years to know of this background, and it's almost there's a word banya, which is like almost a slang slur word to talk to about this business community that I'm from. And I've then in the process tried to redefine what that meaning is, what our role is as a community over these years. I also was as I'm telling you all my sordid past, I was an investment banker on Wall Street, also in the same tradition. And then I walked out, I got very inspired by Gandhian vision of decolonization, and then moved back to India and have been working on this idea of Swaraj, which is an alternative vision, worldview of what the good life is and what it means to be human in this world today. And one of the areas I feel that where the core of colonization sits today is with our knowledge models and our knowledge systems. And so we have continued. I think one of the most painful things was I was taught that my grandmother was uneducated. And I later discovered that she's probably more intelligent than my Harvard professors. But so many of the way we see knowledge, we construct knowledge. And so I is part of the colonial project and continues to this day. And so I have been, first step I took was to unschool my daughter. So I have a 21-year-old daughter. She's never gone to school, never looked at a textbook, never looked at an exam in her life. She's learned from all kinds of people in the community. And the second thing is we set up a whole alternative university, a decolonial university called Swaraj University. And now I've been the last few years involved in a project to set up more than 500 and support more than 500 alternative universities which are working on decolonial ideas and all over the world, called the Ecoversities Alliance. So I will just say that myself right now. Thank you. Over to you, Anders.
Okay, fine, thanks, Manish. I would like to start with, say, I'm Scandinavian, but more precisely Swedish. And when you live in the northern part of Europe, it's very important to differentiate between the countries. But that's where I'm from. And I have to start with, because colonization to us in the northern part of Europe, and to some extent, especially Sweden, is quite special because we're not a colonized nation. So I would say if there's anything that I'm affected with, in that sense, is that we're Americanized in this part of the world. Otherwise, we're a neutral bystander. And some of you probably realize that. So at times we've been seriously critical and outspoken in defense of the oppressed and their right to freedom and their own history and identity, and especially during the 20th century. And that brings into, then I come to myself, because I'm raised in a political environment. And my dad didn't have any education either, Manish. He was self-taught and striving for equality, equal rights and opportunities, inclusion and democracy, both nationally and internationally, globally. I'm humbly trying to do my best to make sure I speak and act and make an impact in the interest of the common good. Of course, I'm solidly anchored in the academic world and the business school world since 20, 30 years back. So when we come to discussing what need to be done and could be done and within the academic world and especially the business schools, of course I have thoughts on that. But that's enough for me. I'm from a different part of the world than you. And you, Manish. But I have a background which has taken me sort of way out there, where you are and where the rest of you are as well. I have had the privilege of experiencing quite a few parts of the world, and I'm going to come back to that later on if we have time. Okay, good to be with you, and I'm looking forward to a great conversation and a good meeting, gathering.
Just the richness of all your lived experiences with the three of you is already fueling a lot of thinking around, why is then decolonizing the business school relevant for us right now? Looking at it from the perspective of the we. Why is it that it's relevant?
Do we want to follow the same order, like in the sense I go first, or you'd like to pop up?
The other way around. I can start.
Amazing.
Yeah, no, we'll do it the other way around. I'll start with saying, because that's the personal side, that's where we've begun. Decolonization to me is to some extent another way of saying that we need to respect and appreciate the diversity of the world in order to sustain and flourish as humanity. The wrongdoings that's been caused during the long period of colonization, which is more than 6 centuries. If there is any way, we can't do anything to that, but if there is any way we can do good today, we should try to do that. And I think then, of course, and it's not that the educational side is key, certainly. There is another reason why business schools, education, or academia is important, because it's also, to some extent, still a very free operating global community where you can move around and there is no strict boundaries. There are some scary things happening, which are closing out people and cutting off the bonds and the communication that is still really, the academic world isn't open. And that's the essence of being academic, that the free thinking, the freedom is key. Freedom of thought, freedom of action, all of that. So I think it's not just that it's education, but the academic world in itself is precious in looking forward globally for what's going to happen to our humanity, to ourselves, and to the planet. Over to you, Manish.
Yes. So I would offer 2 things. So one, I think, is a macro perspective in the sense of the challenges, the complex challenges that we're facing today on the planet require a whole range of different stakeholders to become part of the solution. And it's no longer the model that business can do whatever it wants and the NGOs and the UN needs to come and clean it up. I think that there's a new model that's required, whether it's climate change, whether it's poverty, all the global challenges we're facing. These are complex, and the inherent nature of them being complex requires for us to step up and play different roles together to actually deal with them. And any of these complex challenges can actually bring down the planet, bring down humanity very rapidly as we're moving forward. So on that level, I think there's an invitation for us to invite business leaders and future business leaders to really embrace what is their highest self and highest purpose on the planet. And so in that that's one angle. And the other thing I think is the epicenter of the colonial model is business. If you want to put it bluntly, it's global business, and that's what it's. The nation states were even set up around the world to serve global business, basically, and subsidize global business in many ways, and they continue to do so in various ways. And I think we have a term we've created: deadlyhoods versus a livelihoods. So global business today is a deadlyhoods kind of endeavor. It is, if I talk about colonization, the words that come to my mind are extraction, war, self-hate, unhappiness, monoculture, disease. And it just happens to be all of these words are great business opportunities. So we have a fundamental problem is that the things that are the most unhealthy and destructive and violent are actually good business ways to make a lot of money in the business world. And so I think this misalignment, fundamental misalignment, has to be at some point dealt with in a more sincere and deeper way. So maybe this is the start of a conversation around that, and maybe the business school can actually. The question I would say is, are the business schools ready to disrupt global business? Is the question, I think. I would be holding around this conversation.
I'd like to share also three things, three key things. The first, in my perception, is that colonialism is a project of power, and I agree. Who said that was a French Martinican psychiatrist called Frantz Fanon, and he has studied a lot how this affected our human dimension and relational dimension. So colonialism didn't happen only in this 15th, 16th century. It's renewed through the years and affects us all. Like being a project, it does not leave any part of human person alone, right? It affects it all. So it's all touched by and transpassed by the idea of it. I'm especially interested in narratives and practice that emerge from this power dynamic because they were made. So once they were made, they can be unmade. So this gives me hope. This gives me hope. This gives me hope. So all of our experience will be transpassed by the project, by this project, right? That's the liberation of say that what's right or wrong, good or evil, normal or not normal. So if we change the narratives and the perceptions, is the only way we can build better futures. And this sense of working is included on these better futures, I hope, right? Because I don't think that we can change too much on that sense. So talking about work, this is my second thing. Most people work in companies, and us all, there is an estimation that we spend through our lives 90,000 hours working. Another interesting thing for me is that depression and anxiety costs to global economy 1 trillion each year. And this comes mostly reducing productivity and activity of these people in the world. Is the working environment welcoming the diversity of humans and offering space for multiple types of leaderships, of activities? They are welcoming the needs of a modern life or the change that we have been passing through that collaborates for a healthier space. How we see business as part of the problem, but also as part of the solution. Once most humans spend a lot of time inside of these spaces, contributing to something to grow or something to offer or make things to us all, right? And the third thing is that I told you before that I'm involved in the change-making space, and that involves mostly creativity and innovation. And creativity and innovation, for me, they are key in this machine era that we are entering. So how can we be free in our educational model so we can experience different things? If we think about the school, is probably one of the spaces that Napoleon Bonaparte will be like more comfortable if he would come to visit our times, because it didn't change a lot from the model he developed to make soldiers and citizens. And talking about citizens, I'm talking about men in that view, no? So how can our schools in all kinds of way can change this model that were adapted to shape us in a certain way? So it doesn't offer us the space to create and to innovate and to think about different kinds of business, knowing that there is not only one way to happen in the world and to be present in the world.
Could I build on that, Lana? Is that okay?
Yes, go for it.
And Manish asked the question, how can we change business education and management education? It's almost an overwhelming task if you look at it. but to me, there are at least 3 levels of rethinking and action. It's rethinking the business school as such. And I'm going to give a few examples of questions then that we may need to ask ourselves. Rethinking my own institution and rethinking my own person and my own actions. Pretty much where I think Hai has given us quite some very important comments. For all of us, rethinking the business school would be about really realizing what our foundation, our founders, our original purpose, our raison d'etre really is, our vision, mission, curricula, partnership networks, sources of knowledge, which is a key issue where business schools are looking into right now. So that's one, but that's just one bit of it. Diversity, inclusion, specific context, schools, ingrained perspectives, prejudice, etc. There's a lot when it comes to rethinking the business schools as such. And I hope we're going to get back to the diversity of the world is available for us, because there's lots available to develop new narratives, if you call it, mentioned. For a specific business school, I think it's crucial to be aware of the history and culture. I'm not sure everyone are really realize or question or review or think deeply about where they're at, the values, the beliefs, the knowledge and experience, the wisdom, and of course the activities and the actions. And the key question everyone should ask themselves at a business school, their own school, is what sort of fabric are we made of? We're made up of us, right? People, but what is that material? That material or that matter? And then the last one, which of course everyone individual should ask himself, is what does all of this mean when we see the I don't really know how to phrase it, but there's so much strength and wisdom to learn from beneath obvious conditions and hardship sufferings and scarcely unfair disadvantages that are out there and apparent. And when we see all of this, what does that all mean to us? And especially as academic working at a business school, what does it mean to me? What are the conclusions I make regarding the business school, my own institution? What do I engage in individually, personally, and how? And what should and can I do? I think this is something that we should take very much more seriously. We should follow through on these questions. And if you want to call them inquiries, I agree with that. And I think we all need to live with such an inquiry regarding ourselves as a fundamental way of moving forward. And John can provide us with some of the principles and how we work within GRLI and how it was founded. So I'm not going to go there now, but I'm going to read one quote from when we kicked it off. What became the GRLI? I had the privilege of opening the conference where it all started at a global forum in Bangkok with all business school associations globally, Pladea from South America, the Indian Association Management. There's a growing realization that we need to think and act with new perspectives in mind: ecology, health, social welfare, and a sustainable economic development as we make way for the 7th generation. Well, global responsibility is about what we believe to be good and right. What then is good and right? There's no single answer to this question. And then, of course, my personal answer would be to act in the interest of the common good, with the ultimate aim of all people, that all people will be able to develop to the full potential. And having had the great privilege of experience different contexts around the globe and meeting people and getting to know them, it's amazing what we can draw from in making inquiries into ourselves and into our own institutions. So it's wonderful to sit with the three of us now, actually covering 3 continents.
Yeah.
At
Thank
least.
you. Thank you, Anders, and thank you for sharing what GRLI has already been cultivating and doing in light of this important inquiry. So I'm curious to know, like from you, Manish, and also from you, Hai, what has been shifting already from the places that you're in, or from the organizations that you're part of? What are you noticing that has already been shifting? And what's currently going well that you're drawing inspiration from?
Should I go? Hi?
Please.
Yes? Okay. So I would like to say a few things. One of the things we talk about with decolonization here is that the people who control the definitions and the indicators, they control the game. So what I find, one of the things happening all over the world right now is the very fundamental things, whether we call it success or happiness or the good life or progress, these have been thrown wide open for interrogation. Up to the last 100 or maybe 200 years, these were being defined, and the rest of the world was trying to catch up. These are being defined by the global north. And I find that if you go to our neighbor Bhutan, raising gross national happiness and saying, what's this idea of happiness? We need to rethink it. It's not just having more and more stuff. Or in South America, there's this idea of buen vivir, the good life, and people asking very fundamentally. Or you have in Europe even the degrowth movement. So when one sees a lot of flourishing, that these fundamental definitions, which we were taking for granted, even young people questioning, what is success really? Do I really want to? We've seen this in India happening, what people would have their midlife crises, questioning, what the hell am I doing with my life? What is it all for, when they were in their 40s or 50s? I see 20-year-olds in India now having this question, like, what does success really mean? What's the purpose of my life? So I think this is a very powerful force, this questioning of our definitions and even the indicators, because the indicators set the directionality of things. And so if these don't get opened up, then you're always 2 steps or 3 steps or 5 steps behind somebody else's agenda or game. And that's what happened with the colonial or post-colonial agenda, is we didn't open up the definitions for interrogation. We continued, we let Truman define what is development, and with one broad manifesto, the rest of the whole world was defined as underdeveloped, and that became the new agenda that we all had to catch up in as developing or underdeveloped, and we let ourselves be defined like that. So I think part of that is a very exciting thing that's happening as the space is being reopened. The second thing is, I think there is a interest in talking about and understanding things at a systemic level. And so a lot of the, again, post-colonial work has been how to, under this guise of, and Gandhi tried to warn against it. He was saying that we don't need to just fit back into if we've gotten rid of the British, doesn't mean we become part of the global game and we just replace white faces with brown faces or black faces. And so I think that this understanding that there's a deeper systemic crisis and the need to ask more questions about the roots of the crisis is another very powerful thing that's happening. And unfortunately, we have things like the SDGs, which business schools are adopting, but this is a very superficial level of first level problems and some superficial solutions. What's the roots of those problems? That's where we need to invite more and more people to ask that question and go deeper and deeper. And I think the ways that we are, trying to do that, it doesn't become an intellectual exercise, is that we see so many people around the world. Gandhi had again raised this. He said, modern education is a colonial tool. It only educates the head. And what we need is a more holistic model of education, which invites the head, the heart, the hands, and the home into it. And this idea that there is intelligence beyond human intelligence, this is a growing movement around many indigenous peoples around the world, that the rest of nature is very much intelligent and alive, and even communicating with us if we're open to listen to that. I think this is anything, the movements for compassion, deeper compassion, and opening our hearts and becoming vulnerable and connecting on a different level, which is not only the rational debate level, but in something much more profound. This is the pedagogies that we're working on and people are working on. And the hands, the revaluing. I think we fell into a trap where we said, oh, the intellectual work is the intellectual work, and working with your hands is the lower vocational or skill training work. And actually turning those models on its head and saying that we need to, our hands are very much an essential part to our creativity, to our innovation, to our connection. Our hands and our bodies store an incredible amount of intelligence and wisdom in them. And so we are working on many different kinds of pedagogies which are opening up these things in the Ecoversities Alliance and with many partners around India in our work. The last thing I would just say is that these basic questions, and this connects to the hands and the home part, like these questions in our university, we ask, simple questions, where does my food come from? Most of us on this call have no idea where our food is coming from. And we like to say, we know our doctors, we know our accountants, but why don't we know our farmers anymore? So this question being very essential, why don't people who come to, in our university, we have an organic farm where everybody who comes, they can learn the basics of organic farming. Why don't we consider farming as essential to human living? Good food is essential to human living in relationships. So where does our food come from? Where does our clothes come from? Where does our water come from? Where does our waste go? Even where does our shit go? These are fundamental questions we're asking in our university and trying to build new models around. But I think it starts with asking, what happened with the colonial project and the modernist project is it hid a lot of things. So we have this in economics, what you say, externalities. It's like sweep all the stuff you don't want to deal with, all that shit under the carpet and pretend it doesn't exist. But I think the idea is that we need to look at the costs of the business models we're running, the costs of the development models we're running, and those things can no longer be called externalities. They're very much essential to what human life is and life on the planet is about. I think it's very exciting time that there's a space to experiment with all of these things, with questioning it. More and more people, young people, I find, are super excited about doing that. And so, yeah, over to you. Hi.
Thank you. I fully agree with you, and maybe I will be building on what you just said, and offering a couple of examples around my experience. First of all, I think we have two questions. The first is what have shifted from my experiences and what I've been perceiving in the world. So first, I agree with Manish when he said that our increasing of searching for meaning and the value of work. So people are looking for and building different answers. Probably you all are here looking for different perspectives. So in this I've been seeing having increased. For example, I work I'm faculty member in an institute for change making called the Money Institute. And through the years, we have been seeing people. The organization was created to prepare change makers, so people who were already in the field working with change making. But what we have been seeing now is a lot of people wanting to do increasing this searching for meaning. The second thing has shifted from my experience is that we are running out of time, Earth-wise. We need to do something, right? For our kids, for our grandkids, for everything and every living human that will be living in the near future, including ourselves, who will be living more than our parents and grandparents. So we need to do something. And this have been triggering a lot of discussions that have been interesting. So more living in an era of information, we all can have a lot of information by Googling it or now asking ChatGPT. So more information leads to a lot of things, but also, in my perspective, rerouting search. Alana is the person who talks about rerouting. So there has been a searching for where I came from, what are my ancestors. You can see people doing DNA tests or whatever and coming back to their original lands. So I need to know more about. And because of it, we also want to hear more voices. So I have been seeing increasing the space for indigenous people to talk finally about their experience and their relation with the world, publishing books, but also having spaces to communicate their oral knowledge, right? Because as Manish said, we have this heads and hands duality. Sometimes we have this written and oral duality in offering knowledge. So I have been observing lots of experiences and hearing more or opportunities to do, right? There is also an interesting rising, talking about business, on what's the legacy beyond the company. So we see these SDGs that I agree with Manish, they're a good start, but the SDGs were set by the North Globe. Very few countries in the South Globe participate of the discussion to build the SDGs. So it's a good start, but it's not enough. As the same for ESG, right? There is an interesting rising on ESG and doing more, but again, this was set by the financial market. But anyway, it's a good start. There is also, we can have been seeing heirs sharing fortunes or people questioning why billionaires should exist or not. We see foundations doing very good work around the world. And we have been seeing companies like Patagonia that were already part of being activists for the earth, aligned with their purpose as companies. But now the founders stepped out of the company. He said, and the organization in a way that the earth becomes the only shareholder of the company. So we have a couple of examples around that things are changing. But for me, it's all connected to legacy. And what's currently working, we are talking and curious about it. This for me is already a good start. Making questions, valuing more questions than having answers is super important to find answers. We see new economies models are rising, right? So for me, my favorite examples are the donut economy and economy of communion. They're the two models of economy I'm more interested to, but I'm also interested in Bem Viver, as Manish said, the good living that's set here in Latin America. But we also can see multiple references in business as motors to freedom, in the sense like the way of living becoming business oriented, in the sense veganism, zero waste. People are trying to find a way to balance profit and positive impact. And this way of living is driven, right, different business models. And this is very interesting. A lot of corporations have been looking for B certificates, like B Corps, right? And from my experience, one thing that Manish also makes us aware is possibly in the field of change making super strong, we need to know the origin of the problems. So this is one thing that I make basic in every course I do and I design in my experiences. How can we understand the problems that led us here to talk about solutions? We cannot talk about solutions without understanding what made the problem in the first place, at least in a very broad scenario, so we can be aware and don't play hero. So These are my thoughts.
Thank you. Thank you, Hai. Thank you, Anders. And thank you, Manish. I know we can go on in having this conversation, but we have to go towards the second part of our program, which is small group conversations. And in that small group, we would like for you to have the next 20 minutes of discussing what, given the context that you're in, what are the possibilities that you are seeing when it comes to decolonization, and why is it important for you? So we will be putting you in small groups in breakout rooms, and see you after 20 minutes.
Just give us 1 second. We're just busy recreating. Oh, are you ready?
I've done it.
Oh,
There you go.
I've done it, John.
Could you
Okay.
repeat the question?
The question is I'll say in the chat. In the context that you are in, what are the possibilities that you are seeing when it comes to decolonization, and why is that important for you?
I can broadcast it too, I think.
See everyone. We're seeing people move to breakouts.
Where did I end up?
No, I don't know.
To a room.
You have to join a group.
I'll move you to another room.
Can you move me to another room?
Yeah, try
I'm
that.
going to enter in one room. Okay.
I think Manish, we need to move Manish to room.
Oh yeah, I actually had it set up. Sorry, Chris. I was about to open them when
It's all right.
okay, I think we were working on it simultaneously. I find that people sometimes duck out when the groups open.
Yeah.
So I usually set them up for 4 to 5, even if we're looking for 3 to 4. Let's just see.
Gotcha.
We've got lots of groups now with only 2 people in them.
We can move Manish and Hai to
Oh yeah.
room 7 and 8. Okay. Then I can join room 11. And we have room 13, just the 2 of them. So I don't know, Chris, if you'd want to join
Yeah, sure.
then I'll join room 11 then.
Are you staying here, John?
I'll stay here because I'm just looking. We've got several rooms. It's only got 2,
Oh yeah.
1. So I think we need to.
Oh, some of those haven't joined as well.
Now, I'm going to move this person.
I may go get a cup of tea actually.
Okay, I'll stay here and just check.
I think that's nearly everybody in there.
Hi, Anders.
Yeah, I'm back.
Sorry, they made the groups too small, so
Yeah, we were
I've moved
two.
you back.
We were two, and that was way too small. But
Yeah.
it was nice. We started a nice conversation anyway.
Sorry, okay.
So
Let's just see. Okay, there are quite a few people in the main room now. I don't know. Hansa, are you there? Jaya, are you joining one of the groups?
oh,
Jaya?
there's not that many, John. It's
Jaya, Ganga, Sai, Lisa. Let me just see.
I have rejoined. Actually, I've rejoined. I got out of connection, so I have rejoined the same link. Are you
Okay.
guys still in the session?
Which group were you in?
I was with Manish about the decolonising the business thing.
Yeah. Which small were you in a small group?
I think I've missed that conversation because I told you I had to rejoin. I have missed, I think, 5-10 minutes conversation.
Okay, I'll put you in a small room, okay?
Okay.
Jürgen, hi. Sorry, were you disconnected? Hi, Jürgen. Sorry, were you disconnected?
Oh, just hang on a second.
Okay.
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
Sorry, I actually have been out of town, so I think it's a bit late. Sorry for that.
No, not at all. Did you only join just now? Because we're in the middle of a small group breakout. So if you missed the first bit, then I can place you in a small room, in a small group, if you want to join the discussion.
The trouble is I haven't seen or haven't heard what you have been doing before.
Yes.
I think I will disappear.
Okay.
It's much better for the group.
Well, they're going to be back in about 15 minutes, 8 minutes.
yeah,
So you're welcome to join for the remainder if you wish.
Yeah, I think I could. I have actually, don't laugh. I have to convince her to talk to my dog because she was barking in the living room and it's time to go out.
Anyway, you're always welcome, Jürgen.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay.
Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
so should I? Hello.
Hi. Were
Hi.
you in a breakout group?
Yeah, but I was with Portugal, one person
Oh,
in room 3. So we need some company. We started fine. And then the room was closed.
oh,
Yeah, no, but the person moved, Anders. So when the person moved, I moved you here.
Okay, so you moved Portugal to somewhere
Yeah, because I knew you. I could see you on your own there, which is
that we were okay.
Yeah, I think that so the learning here is if we want groups of 3 to 4, when we create the groups. Sorry, Chris, I actually did have it set up like this, but I didn't.
Sorry, John.
If we want groups of 3 to 4, we need to set it for 5, because inevitably people drop out, and then
okay.
yeah. So at the moment in room 13, we've got Kathleen Curran and Reinhold Titus on their own.
We're still recording. Okay, welcome back from the breakout rooms, everybody. I hope that was a nourishing time of exchange between you. I certainly heard a lot of really stimulating and sometimes challenging things up front from the conversation starters. So I hope that's prompted some interesting discussions for you. So we've got about 15 minutes now just to share thoughts and reflections, ask any further questions of the conversation starters if there are any, and just to hear a sense of where everybody is, where you all are, having had that time together, the more intimate time in your rooms. So I'm wondering whether there are particular questions that this has raised for you all. Would anybody like to jump in? What's the question that's bubbling for you at the moment?
So I have a question. This is Purva from
Hi.
India. Hi, Manish just sent us this link and I just jumped into the meeting. And I was sharing with my group that I've never been to business school. I'm a single parent, I teach art, but a lot of things obviously seem connected and matter. So I just wanted to know, I just subscribed to the newsletter too, as to how, I'm at a stage where I feel like I want to give back now to society. So I would love to know how to stay connected and what I could start contributing in my way. So that's my question. Yes, thank you.
Wow, thank you. Does anybody feel moved to respond?
I have a sharing to do. I'm Jaya.
Hi.
Yeah, actually, I just entered this link as Purva said, and in room number 8, I was there with Sumati, Anna, and one more lady was there, the very beautiful one. So we have discussed about the major issues of the forest tribal areas in the part of the country called India, where how the people in forest or the tribes are being manipulated and they are being exploited out of the commercial and the colonizing setup in Indian markets that has been deep ingrained. But as a psychologist, I want to raise a question that yes, people have a desire of money, a deep desire of money. And this deep desire of money, if it's coming from a privileged class of people, of all of us, and I consider all of us that yes, we are privileged, at least I am privileged because I have everything possible to survive. I'm not living in a jungle. So if I'm not living in a jungle without any resources, I feel I'm privileged. Then the person who does not have it, they only yearn for it. The person who have not seen, have not experienced wealth or happiness or love, they only have a deprivation and a void to have it, to fill it, to experience it. Coming on to the question that why they need to have money, this is not a question. The question should be like, what I feel is that why we are not holding pride in the indigenous markets of our local setups. Why this thought that if my father was a farmer and if I will be a farmer, that's a low self-esteem rating thing. I want to become an Adani, I want to become a Mark Zuckerberg, but only after I'm passing out from elite B school, then only I will be holding a pride in my name that I'm a pass out of a Harvard, I'm a pass out of a Columbia University, XYZ. But why we are losing a sense of trust in our people? That is one question. Because if you are losing the sense of community, and we are saying that we have to inhibit the usage of internet in tribal areas, what about the connectivity? Can we deny that we all are from the different parts of the world, but still we are connected? So why this privilege should be given to us? Are we not the people who are using phone? Are we not the people who are watching reels? Like being a psychologist, I like 90% of the work I do online, it's all shit. I'm scrolling and I'm educated, I'm well read, I have been trained what to do, what not to do. And why we are thinking that I know that when these people will have internet, they will only misuse it. So this one foray, yeah. So I want to bring all these questions on this forum. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. So I'm hearing questions about how do I contribute? What is my role within this change process? And I'm hearing questions about how do we decolonize our view of what roles and what jobs and functions have higher status than others, and can we dismantle that hierarchy? All right, other questions that have come up in the discussions or observations people would like to make?
Yeah, I would like to say something. I was also with Jaya, and I was the one who raised this question that the youth of the tribal area which is left uneducated by giving them third-class schools, are given now the network, the towers, and the internet accessibility to them is really turning out to be harmful because they do not know. Of course, they scroll, but they're the youth. They are supposed to get their education. They're supposed to do something, be something, have some way of earning source and have their career set up, but they are wasting their time on internet. So internet is not the problem. The problem is that their schooling has been really very bad. The teachers do not arrive in the school. The schools are not having good infrastructures, and nobody supervises whether the exams are taking place properly or teachers are teaching or not. And the thing is that the most important question which I raised was, the business school, do they teach their students that how much money is required for a person to be happy in life? How much money a person should aim to earn? Why the businessman and the corporates are going on earning money, and they are not thinking about anything else? I told that from my area every day, an iron ore of around 2,000 billion rupees goes out from my city, from the place I stay every day. And the mining is going on for 24 hours by 24 by 7 by 365 days. So there should be some limit, because if this is going to happen, all the trees are going to cut, all the forests are going to cut, the tribals will not have the place to live, their homes will be lost, even the other villagers also lose their homes, we will lose our environment, our next generations is going to suffer, most of the generations are going to suffer. So why don't these people who are having so much of money, they think that they can just be satisfied with a little less money?
Thank you. Thank you. The questions of when is enough, questions of are there different ways to run business that aren't focused exclusively on extraction and the concentration of wealth in one place. Other questions?
Can I come in, Chris?
Yeah, please.
There's Kirsten's put a question in the chat, which I really like, which it had a relationship to the conversation that I was having in my group, which is about shifting the dominant narrative. How do we do that? How do we change the narrative? How do we create in that space between one story and another? How do we amplify alternative narratives? I think it's really a good question. So forgive me, Kirsten, for jumping in on your question, but I just thought it was really good and aligned so much with what we were talking about.
Thank you. Other observations? Yeah, Kathleen.
Yeah, I was in a conversation with Reinhold and Anders, and I will try to be succinct in finding what the question is. Not my strong suit in being succinct, but it was inspired by Kristen's question as well, as going back and back, trying to dig into what's the source. The narrative is one, and therefore what is sitting under the narrative? What has inspired that narrative? I think of this because of my own experience in teaching in an MBA program now, that there are objectives set, of course, in any university. This is what a course must fulfill. And these are the courses that must be completed to a given standard in order to earn this degree. But when the objectives don't include what we're talking about and only have limited criteria to meet and assess against, then we will never get change. I can bring in pieces to my classes, even, and we're in a very political climate in the US, even then I am conscious of what words I use and how I frame the topic, because anything can be politicized and immediately for or against. And so to keep it gentle and palatable, I change the words or describe differently. But I find that I feel bound by objectives.
Thank
and
you.
Desired outcomes. So what do we do to change that? That would be my question.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, I've got John and then Camilla who have points to raise. And then I think I'm going to give each of the conversation starters a kind of a final reflection to take us out. John and then Camilla.
Thanks, Chris. Maybe just two things from my side in case it's relevant at this point. I think the first is to just remind us that one of the reasons we are hosting these, what we call courageous conversations, is to hear voices that we don't typically hear in the context. Now, the GRLI, as many, we have a link to the Global Compact and to the EFMD and AACSB, so very much in the management education space. And of course, we have platforms like the Deans and Directors Cohort, where a business school dean can speak to another business school dean and say, how are you dealing with faculty, etc., etc. What we're trying to do here is really challenge some of our underlying assumptions about how the world works and what we need to do. And so I just want to remind everyone that if we are hearing about fairly fundamental challenges to coming from voices outside of our immediate sphere of influence and our immediate ecosystem, that we try and take that on board. And one of the things that I am hearing, and I think this is my second point, is that there's been, especially through business, a very strong emphasis and leverage of technology and technological innovation that has, to a large extent, enabled the colonization that we're discussing. And I wonder to what extent we can balance and need to balance that with more relational innovation. In other words, things like whole person learning or discussions with people beyond our immediate sphere of influence and scope of knowledge. How do we balance the technological innovation with the relational innovation? And so that was what comes up for me. And I think it talks to what Kirsten posted here about shifting the dominant narrative and amplifying alternative narratives.
Thanks.
That was it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. I had a short comment that might be seen as a question also. What I've been working here in Brazil, I live in São Paulo here in Brazil, what I've been trying to reach is different people to listen to this message. So I am taking the topics of diversity and inclusion to schools, thinking that why not reaching the youngest people, 10 years old class, for example, and then teaching them how to think differently of what we've been learning to change their systems, and then raising different adults which are ready to a new kind of thoughts when they reach the business world. And then when they get to the leaderships and C-levels, things will be changed. So it's a long-term process and program, but it's something that makes the changes an inner and profound and definite and sustainable change within each individual that I can reach here. So it's little by little, but we are eternal believers here in Brazil. So that's the way I see it. The question is, why not bringing this such important and massive thought for the youngest people so they can grow with that, with a new truth. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you. Questions about the role of individual change within systemic change. And thank you. Okay, so if we put this back to the conversation starters now, then just to finish us off, and I wonder if you've each got a kind of a 90-second kind of final reflection to take us out. Yeah, and that'll take us pretty much up to time. So who'd like to start?
I can go because
Great,
I will
thanks,
just pick one thing. And goes in how can we change from inside out, right? We all are waiting for something to change, but we are the people who are going to change. So who are the people you are including in your biography for your students to learn from? Let us say a negotiation. It's very popular to teach Harvard business model of negotiation. It's a good model, but is it the only model? If you ever go to Nairobi, you are going to discover that you cannot buy anything without negotiating, anything. So why we don't learn from different models of negotiating and stop saying that's the only one narrative only? There is a powerful TED from Shimamanda that she says about the dangers of a single story. And we are the people who are going to change this, offering different perspectives for our students. So to review the biography, for example, is a very starting point, right? And how can we think out of ourselves? How can we be better ancestors to live with less money, if money is the question of the origin of the problem in this society you are living in? So start questioning and starting by ourselves and looking for answers and decolonize ourselves. So from you, who you are reading, listening, watching, who are you following in social media, who is colonizing your practices and your ideas. So start changing that, getting more perspective, more diversity on that. For sure, it will shift the perspectives and you are going to start opening space for different practices. So we cannot expect only the things are going to change. We need to be change makers in this sense. And this is not a short run, it's a marathon. So we need to prepare ourselves to run a lot of time and get hydrated in this process. How can we take care of ourselves in this process too? So this is my final advices and trying to offer in some lights in the questions that came up. And these are my social media I put on my name. So I have my Instagram and my LinkedIn. So I'm open to keep on the conversation.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, Anders.
Yeah. I was with Reynold and Kathleen, and we touched upon, and Reynold raised it, I think, first, the critical, crucial importance of context. We're all products of our context. So listening and getting to know the world as much deep and wide as possible is a way of cutting loose to learn, and to learn from the vast and rich diversity of the world. So I would say focus on developing your curiosity and care genes.
Thank you. Manish.
Okay, so I was reflecting a bit on my own decolonial journey, and I think that the thing I would offer is, right now, the most fundamental question I would say is our notion or narrative around wealth. What is real wealth? And I would argue that the money system is actually a fake form of wealth, because it never leaves us feeling satisfied or complete or whole in it, or with a sense of abundance or generosity. So what are the other forms of wealth, and how do we start to revalue them, regenerate them? There's a saying I remember from a friend of Brazil. They said they came and they took our diamonds and gave us mirrors. So I think this is what's happening globally, not only for people of color, but also for white brothers and sisters. They're taking all of our diamonds, the real wealth that we hold, the social relationships, the creativity, the connections with the rest of nature, the spiritual traditions we have, and they're giving us mirrors. And that mirrors is a promise to some sense of respect or happiness, which we know is actually isn't the case. And in my own spiritual tradition, there's a saying, less is more. And I think we're trapped in a paradigm which we think more and having more and more is going to give us this respect or love or care that we all want. But maybe less is actually it's almost a paradox. But when we have things that we can really value again deeply, right now we're overloaded with so many things and we keep running after things, but offering that. And the last thing I would just say is there's a few things which I think are the blocks, which I feel for the narrative. Actually, the narratives, parallel narratives are there, but and exist all around us, but there's a few things we're blocked into. So one is, I think, this notion of white man's burden, and which basically means that I had banker friends of mine saying, if we stopped all of this destruction and exploitation, the whole world would starve. So we need to do this for the good of the well-being of the planet. We need to continue this machine going. And we need to keep raping and pillaging the planet, because that's the only thing that will keep feeding people or helping them. And I think that ignores the tremendous amount of cultural and technological and local resources that people all over. So the part of the colonial agenda was to say that people don't have anything, they're empty. The communities, they all need our help. But so I think that one is we need to really confront that. The second thing is this myth of technological utopianism, that technology can solve it. We don't have to worry too much. And the thing is, the other thing, at least in India and many places, is still white superiority. Every problem, everything we face, we keep looking to white business schools or white people, to white consultants, McKinsey, all of these paradigms that are coming from the West to solve us. We forget that how our own richness. So I think part of the journey forward is to remind us of all the richness, that the real diamonds that we all have in our communities. So I would close it with that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. I think we're just about done then. I want to thank the three conversation starters, Hai, Anders, and Manish, for everything they've contributed today. Extremely thought-provoking, challenging, engaging, and incredibly timely, I think. And I want to thank everybody else on the call for showing up today, for taking an interest, for everything that you're doing in your own lives and your own institutions to support this forward movement, and everything that you will do in future too. So thank you all for being here. Thank you for being part of the process. Lana, a final word?
Yes, so I've shared it in the chat. We'll have the next two Courageous Conversations for July and September. So please do block it in your calendar. And at the same time, to leave us off with just something to think about, you know, looking at our own context and bringing it to the eye. What internal aspect of decolonization can we explore and experiment as we leave this conversation? So thank you for joining. And if there are people who are in your field or in your network who are a great fit to be conversation starters on the topics of sustainability and degrowth, please do let us know or connect them with us, so that we can have a very rich and decentralized way also of bringing voices in. I really love that we've had such a rich representation of voices for today's conversation.
Thank you. Go well, everyone. Thank you.